いつもモーサテプレミアムをご覧いただきましてありがとうございます。テレビ東京の片渕茜です。日経平均株価が高値圏にあり、アメリカの株価も年始から上昇が目立ってきましたが、今後の相場はどうなるのでしょうか。世界の金融市場では、強気相場は悲観の中で生まれ、懐疑の中で育ち、楽観の中で成熟し、陶酔の中で消えていくという有名な相場格言があります。まず景気の悪化などで全ての投資家が悲観している時に株価の上昇が始まり、続いて懐疑先行きをまだ警戒しているうちはゆっくりと上昇、その後景気も回復し、楽観した投資家が増えた時に高値となって、最終的に全ての投資家が強気になって陶酔した時には上昇相場が終わってしまうという流れを示した格言です。アメリカの著名投資家ジョン・テンプルトン氏の言葉ですが、今の日本株そして世界の株価はこの中のどの局面にあるのでしょうか。テンプルトン氏が創業した会社をルーツに持ち、全世界でおよそ200兆円を運用する巨大投資会社フランクリン・テンプルトンの経営トップに聞きました。
I'd like to ask about the Japanese stock market, and also the BOJ, Bank of Japan, is moving away from negative interest rate and heading for, it seems, heading for the raise rates. Generally speaking, when the central bank raises rates, it could have a negative impact on the stock market. How do you see the Japanese situation at the stock market?
So it's interesting because Japan's pretty unique in an environment where people are, where they're looking to raise rates, whereas I think many other countries and regions have, already raised rates and are now reducing. And it's really, I think, from the reforms that go back to Abenomics and the kind of, monetary stimulus and loose monetary policy, fiscal stimulus. I think that normally you would say that rising rates would be not great for equity markets. But in this particular case, if you held cash, you actually earned money, right? Because it was deflationary in Japan. For the first time in multiple decades, we are actually seeing inflation. So if you're holding cash, you're losing money, which is going to encourage people to invest in the stock market. And so that's where I think that change comes in. And I think the programs that have been put in place, like with NISA, where there are tax incentives to invest in the stock market, are really important. And I think the fact that the dollar to the yen have been, there's a huge divergence in those two. When rates peak in the U.S. and start to be cut, you tend to have the dollar fall. When rates are raised, the yen should rise, right? And so that's actually going to drive foreign investors, I think, to come into the Japanese market, which will also buoy the market.
So you were quite positive after the BOJ moves to the raise rates?
Yes.
I see. And actually, the Japanese people have never seen this kind of landscape on the Nikkei 220. It's almost closing to the record high, and it's quite. So can we be slightly more optimistic?
Yeah. So it's record high, because you've been in a country that's had deflation for so many decades. Now you're going into a more normal where there's actually good economic growth. I think the market trades at about 15 times earnings. That's actually not that expensive to the rest of the world, right? And again, as I mentioned, I think for foreign investors, the currency move is positive for the market as well. And then, this whole move towards reshoring and nearshoring, you're seeing Japan as a beneficiary of the China plus one on the supply chain. So I think all of those will encourage economic growth here.
So I have to ask you about, John Templeton said, the bull markets are born on pessimism, grow on skepticism, and mature on optimism, and die on euphoria. Within those four phases, where do Japanese stocks are in standing?
I'd say it's probably towards the end of growing on skepticism. Okay, so I think you're between 2 and 3 there. And again, for all the reasons, because I think there's a real top-down policy approach to wanting to encourage investment. And look at the corporate governance reforms. So I think there's a lot of positive there. And then if you think about the things that are headwinds to growth, right? one of the challenges in Japan has been the labor market and the demographics. Well, you have more women coming into the market, so that's been able to add employees, but also we're living in this time of great technological advances between AI, robotics, blockchain. All of those things are going to have great productivity improvements, and so the labor market's going to be able to be, I think, enhanced by having the productivity gains.
So this question might overlaps your answer right now, but so Japanese stocks have yet to surpass the all-time high, which recorded more than 30 years ago. So what could be the condition for the Japanese stocks to exceed that peak?
Yeah, I actually think that